I never expected her to remember my name, let alone everything else. Most people at the neighborhood coffee shop don't look up when someone walks in. Everyone's tired, everyone's scrolling. But she always did. Every Saturday, around 10, she'd be sitting by the window with a paperback flipped face down and a thermos she insisted kept her coffee hotter than their machines ever manage. Her name was Maya, but I never said it out loud unless she said mine first. Maybe that was why it felt safer. That morning, the place was louder than usual. Milk frothers hissing, a kid kicking the leg of a table, the doors squeaking every 3 minutes. I almost left. Then she lifted her head, spotted me in line, and gave this tiny wave. Not big, not friendly, just familiar, like she was acknowledging a recurring thought, not a person. I waved back before I could think about it. She beat me to the punch with the barista. His order's the same, she said without looking up from her book. I blinked. You remember that? You're predictable, she murmured, turning a page, the corner of her mouth curling. My heart did this stupid stutter it hadn't done since high school. I carried my drink to her table because pretending not to felt ruder than intruding. She pretended to be surprised. I pretended to believe her. You're early, she said. Couldn't sleep. She lifted an eyebrow, the kind only tired adults can pull off. Too much on your mind or nothing at all? Both, I said, and it came out too quickly. She didn't push. She never did. That was the thing about her. She left space. Space to talk, space to not talk, space to breathe. Maybe that's why I stayed standing there longer than I meant to. When she noticed, she nudged the chair opposite her with her foot. Sit before you drop the cup. I did, and I tried not to stare at her hands as she folded the corner of her napkin into a perfect triangle, then unfolded it again. Her version of fidgeting, I guessed. So, she said, eyes flicking toward mine, then away again. You look like someone who forgot something. I did. What was it? I don't know, I admitted. She laughed softly, barely audible over the grinding beans. That kind of laugh you only give to people you're comfortable with, even if you're trying not to show it. It'll come back to you, she said. It wasn't until then that I noticed she wasn't wearing the ring she used to fiddle with. I didn't ask. I didn't want to confirm anything. Not the guess, not the hope, not the quiet ache I tried to ignore every time she smiled at me like she was cataloging the details. She caught me staring at her thermos. You can ask, she said. About what? Whatever you're thinking. I don't think you'd want to hear it. She pressed her lips together like she was stopping a confession of her own. Probably not, she said. But she didn't look away. There was a silence, one of those too still, too warm ones, and suddenly I noticed the notifications on my phone. Unsent drafts of texts to people I never sent. Photos I meant to delete. Questions I meant to ask someone, anyone, but never did. She tilted her head. You okay? Yeah, I said, even though the pause before it said too much. Just tired. She took a slow sip. Tired can mean lonely. I didn't answer. She didn't push. We sat like that until she checked her watch and sighed. I should go before I talk myself into staying. She packed her things, slow, careful movements, and as she stood, she leaned down just slightly, just enough for her voice to reach only me. You shouldn't visit alone so often, she whispered. I start noticing things. And then she walked out before I could decide what she meant. YNDP, part one line, but the door kept swinging long after she was gone, like it couldn't decide whether to close on her or on me. I didn't see her again for 6 days. I tried not to count them, but I did anyway, in quiet, embarrassing ways. Checking the coffee shop window when I passed by. Pausing before opening the door to my building in case she happened to be locking hers. Listening for steps on the shared staircase even when I knew she was probably asleep. It was stupid, the kind of restless awareness you deny even to yourself. On the 7th night, I found her outside the building, kneeling by the mailbox with a small toolkit beside her. The porch light skimmed across her face, catching the faint tiredness beneath her eyes. She looked up, startled. Oh, it's you. I live here, I said, and she smirked, sharp, amused, a little embarrassed. The lock jammed again, she said, tugging at the metal flap. Your friend, your mom's friend, promised he'd fix it last month. Shocker, right? There it was. The reminder I tried not to think about. I'd met her because she was my friend's mom, and I wasn't supposed to keep visiting after he moved out. I crouched beside her. Let me try. She hesitated, then slid the tools toward me. Her hand brushed mine, brief, barely there, but enough to pull my heartbeat uncomfortably close to my throat. I tightened a loose screw, pressed the latch, and the flap clicked open. She blinked. Show off. You loosened it first, I said. She didn't respond. Just watched me with that unreadable expression she used when she wanted to say something but chose silence instead. Then she sat back on her heels. You know, she said quietly. When you were younger, you used to leave notes folded into squares so tiny they looked like confetti. I froze. You remember that? I cleaned your friend's room more than he did, she said. I found everything. Her voice softened as she said it, like the memory touched something she wasn't ready to admit. My kid thought you were annoying, she added. Yeah, I laughed weakly. He told me that enough times. But I always thought you were. I don't know. Interesting. She winced immediately. God, that sounded wrong. It didn't, I said. Not to me. She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the now unlocked mailbox and pulled out a small stack of envelopes. One slipped, fluttering to the ground. We both reached for it. Her fingers landed over mine again, this time lingering a fraction too long before she pulled back like she'd touched something burning. This is why I shouldn't let you visit alone, she whispered. I start remembering things I shouldn't. She turned away quickly, pretending to sort the mail. I pretended not to notice her breathing shift. A careful inhale, a slower exhale. Do you ever miss it? I asked quietly. Miss what? Before everything got complicated. She stared at the envelopes like they were safer than my face. Every day, she said. The porch light buzzed overhead. The street was too quiet. Something unspoken stretched between us, delicate and reckless. And then she reached out, not dramatically, not even confidently, and brushed a bit of dust off my sleeve with her thumb. A tiny gesture, a nothing gesture, but my whole chest reacted like she'd said something huge. ENDP, Part 2 line, and for a moment, her hand hovered there, like she was deciding whether to pull away or hold on just a second too long. For 2 days after the mailbox incident, Maya avoided me. Not dramatically, no slammed doors, no changed routines, just a subtle redirection of her presence. Footsteps on the stairs at different times. Lights on later than usual. The kind of avoidance that could be coincidence if you wanted to lie to yourself. I tried not to notice. Failed. On the third evening, I found her in the shared laundry room, leaning against the dryer with her arms folded. She looked like she'd been waiting for something to finish, but when she saw me, her posture stiffened just slightly. You're early, she said. You're always here this time, I replied. Her eyes did that quick flick, toward me, away, back again. A defensive rhythm. I've been busy, she said, though the dryer was clearly empty, humming just to sound useful. I stepped inside. The room was too small for pretending we didn't feel whatever had started forming between us. You don't have to avoid me, I said before I could phrase it better. She sighed. I wasn't avoiding Maya. The way her name sounded in my voice made her eyelids press together for a second. Tiny reaction. Too honest. She busied herself with a leftover detergent cup, wiped a non-existent spill, adjusted the dryer's settings even though it wasn't even running anymore. I don't know what you think is happening, she said quietly. I don't think anything, I lied. Exactly, she whispered. Neither do I. A beat passed. One of those heavy, slow-motion ones. Then the door behind me creaked open. My old friend, her son, poked his head in. Hey, man, got a minute? He asked, not noticing her immediately. I stepped aside too fast, and Maya stepped back even faster. We both overcorrected like guilty people in a bad sitcom. He frowned at the awkwardness. You too good, he asked. Laundry, she said quickly. Yeah, I echoed, sounding nothing like a human being who'd ever done laundry. He shrugged, said he'd catch me later, and left. When the door closed again, the silence felt different, startled, exposed. Maya pressed a hand to her forehead, laughing under her breath in this tired, self-mocking way. That was close, she murmured. We weren't doing anything. I know, she said. But we were standing too close. I didn't have a response to that. She took a step forward, then another, like she wasn't sure whether she meant to leave the room or close the distance between us. Her fingers brushed the drier edge as she passed me. Nervous, searching, almost trembling. "Do you ever think about that day at the cafe?" she asked suddenly. My mouth went dry. Every day. Her breath caught, audible in the quiet room. She turned toward me fully this time. No excuses. No distractions. Just the two of us standing with a handful of inches and a mountain of implications between us. "I shouldn't ask this," she whispered. "Ask what?" "What you would have done if I hadn't walked away." Her hand lifted, not touching me, just hovering near my jaw, close enough that the warmth of her skin reached mine. I leaned in without meaning to. She leaned in without intending to. Our breaths touched. Our foreheads almost did. Almost. She pulled back at the last second, pressing her lips together like she'd bitten down on a confession. "YNDP. Part 3 line, and the space she left between us felt like something I'd stepped into too late, or too early to admit I wanted. It happened on one of those evenings where everything felt too normal to be dangerous. She was outside, locking up the small side gate, hair pulled back, sleeves pushed up like she'd been gardening or fixing something she didn't want to ask for help with. I was returning from a late shift, hands cold, mind empty in a way that made noticing her too easy. She heard my steps and looked up. "Oh," she said softly. "You're back late." "Yeah." I didn't mean for my voice to sound relieved, but it did. She hesitated, then nodded toward the sidewalk. "Walk with me, just to the corner." It wasn't really a question. We walked side by side, quietly. The streetlights hummed. A dog barked somewhere behind a fence. Her hands were buried in her pockets, shoulders tense like she was holding something in. Halfway down the block, she spoke. "My son called today," she said. "He asked if you'd been around." My chest tightened. "What did you say?" "That you hadn't," she murmured. I lied without thinking. She stopped walking, facing the dim glow of a street lamp. She wasn't looking at me, but her voice was pulling me closer. "He worries about you," she said. "Which is funny because he never noticed when you were hurting before." "I did. I always did." Her voice cracked, barely. "He doesn't know you like I do." I swallowed. "That's not your fault." "It feels like it is," she whispered. Then something changed, something small, but sharp. She looked at me with this expression I didn't recognize at first. Then I realized, jealousy. "I saw you talking to that girl," she said, too carefully. "What girl?" "At the cafe. Blonde hair. Blue jacket." "Oh, a classmate." She nodded, jaw tight. "You laughed at something she said." There it was. Not anger. Not suspicion. Fear of losing control. "Maya," I said softly. "It wasn't anything." It looked like something. Her voice trembled. I'd never heard that before. I stepped closer. "Why does it bother you?" She looked away like the answer was dangerous. When she finally spoke, it wasn't loud. It wasn't even clear. "I've spent months trying not to want more than I should." My breath caught. "More with me." She exhaled shakily. "Don't ask me that." But she didn't walk away. The wind moved her hair. A passing car cast a ripple of light across her face. She looked like someone trying not to open a door that had already swung inward. "I keep thinking," she said quietly, "that if I let myself slip even once, I won't stop." Her voice dropped lower. "And you're too young to understand what that kind of mistake costs." "I'm not," I said. "You are," she insisted, but her eyes didn't match the firmness in her words. They searched mine like she needed me to disagree. A long silence stretched between us, aching, fragile. Then she stepped closer, just half a step, but her breath brushed my cheek. One more inch, and something irreversible would have happened. She lifted her hand, almost touching my face, then froze in the air between us. "Tell me," she whispered, "why I feel like I'm the only one trying not to cross this line." YNDP, Part 4 line, and the question hung there, trembling between us, waiting for the answer I wasn't sure I should give. For 3 days after the question she asked beneath the street lamp, everything shifted. Not in the way I expected. Not in the way I wanted. She vanished. Lights off when they were usually on. Curtains drawn even in the morning. Her shoes missing from the hallway rack. No thermos in the cafe window. No glimpse of her at the mailbox. At first, I told myself she was busy. People have lives, responsibilities, errands. But by the second day, it felt like she'd erased her outline from every place she usually left it. By the third, I stood outside her door with my hand raised, ready to knock. I lowered it just as fast. I wasn't her son, or her partner, or anything that gave me the right to ask where she'd gone. Still, I lingered. I heard faint footsteps then, the hesitant, careful ones she made when she didn't want anyone to know she was home. But she didn't open the door. Instead, she spoke through it. Just one line. "Please don't wait for me." Her voice sounded exhausted. Older, like someone carrying something she'd been hiding for too long. I stepped back. "Are you okay?" Silence. Then, "I need a little space." The lock clicked softly. Not to let me in, just to separate us more clearly. I stood there for a few seconds, pretending I didn't understand what that meant. But I did. Too well. When I finally turned to leave, I saw her son's car pulling up outside. He stared at me through the windshield. I stared back, caught like a kid sneaking out of the wrong house. He stepped out. "You haven't been around lately." I shrugged. "Been busy." He narrowed his eyes. "My mom said the same thing." Weird timing. I froze. That was all he said before heading inside, but it lodged itself under my ribs like a warning. Something was happening. Something I wasn't being told. That night, she finally broke the silence, but not in person. A message buzzed onto my phone at 11:47 p.m. Maya. "He visited today. My ex. The one who left. He's trying to repair things. For our son's sake. For appearances. I don't know." I stared at the screen until it blurred. Another message came in. "Maya, please don't read into this. Please don't make it harder." I typed out 3 different replies. "Do you want him back? Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you want from me." Deleted all of them. Instead, I wrote, "Me. If you're choosing what's safe, I understand." But I didn't send it. I watched the cursor blink until the phone dimmed. Tried again. Deleted again. It wasn't heartbreak. Not even disappointment. Just that strange, suspended feeling. Like someone had stopped a sentence halfway through and walked out of the room. Later that night, I passed her window on the way to my place. Her light was on. Her shadow was visible. She stood there for a long time, unmoving. She didn't open the curtains. I didn't go closer. But neither of us turned away immediately. ENDP, Part 5 line, and between us, the unsent message felt heavier than anything either of us had dared to say out loud. It was almost midnight when she finally opened her door. Not wide, just enough for her face to appear in the narrow slice of light. I hadn't knocked, had only stood there, unsure whether I was gathering courage or just failing to leave. She looked tired, not in the physical way, but in the way people look when they've been wrestling with themselves too long. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know. But you're still here." "I know," I repeated. Her eyes closed for a moment, like she was bracing for something she wasn't ready to name. Then she stepped back, wordlessly inviting me inside. Her kitchen was dim, lit only by the small bulb above the stove. A mug sat untouched on the counter. Chamomile tea. She only brewed that when she couldn't sleep. She leaned against the counter. I stayed near the doorway, a distance neither of us could pretend was accidental. "I didn't want to disappear," she said. "I just didn't know how to stay." I swallowed. "You don't owe me an explanation." She laughed once, the sound brittle. "That's the problem. You never ask for anything. And I keep pretending that makes it easier." A long silence followed. Not harsh, just full. She ran her thumb along the rim of the mug. My ex showing up, it confused me. Not because I want to go back, but because it reminded me of how messy I am inside. She looked up at me. "You don't need someone messy." "I need the truth," I said quietly. She blinked, surprised. "The truth?" "Yeah." I took a slow breath. "Like whether you pulled away because of him, or because of me." There. The thing I'd been holding behind my teeth for weeks. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked past me to the small dining table and sat down. Her hands folded together, then apart, then folded again. Finally, she spoke. "You make me feel seen," she said. "And that terrifies me. I'm older. I have a child. I have a past I barely understand myself. I'm supposed to be the steady one, the wiser one." "You are," I said. She gave a faint smile. Not with you. I took a step forward. She didn't move away. I don't want to be a mistake you make at 44, she whispered. I don't want to be a story you outgrow. You're not a mistake. Her gaze flicked to mine, quick, unguarded. Say that again. You're not a mistake. Her breath shook on the way out. And for the first time in weeks, she didn't hide it. She reached out, slow and unsure, and rested her hand on my wrist. Not pulling me closer, not asking me to stay, just holding, testing whether the world would break if she touched me honestly. It didn't. I stepped closer until our knees almost brushed. She didn't flinch. Her thumb moved once over my skin, an instinct, not a choice. Maya, I said quietly. She looked up. I don't know what happens next, I admitted. But I want to stop pretending I don't care. Her eyes softened, and she whispered, barely audible. Okay. Not permission, not confession, just the smallest opening, offered without armor. ENDP, Part 6 line, and in that quiet, okay, something in both of us finally loosened, like a door we'd been leaning against for far too long had eased open by itself. Time didn't rush to fix anything. It drifted, like late afternoon light stretching across a room. Weeks passed in small, almost unnoticeable increments, her switching to earlier shifts, him walking a little slower past the cafe window at 8:47 a.m., the way they stopped pretending that those coincidences were accidents. They didn't collide back into each other. They eased. The morning they finally talked again wasn't planned. She was sitting on the bench, the same one where they had skirted around the truth too many times, cradling a cup of tea that had already gone lukewarm. A familiar pair of footsteps approached, slowed, then stopped. He didn't sit right away, just stood there for a beat, hands in pockets, breathing like someone deciding whether to jump into cold water. Then, quietly, "Can I?" He gestured at the empty space beside her. She nodded, eyes on her tea. He sat, not too close, not far either, just enough for shared warmth to sneak between them. For a while, they didn't speak. The silence wasn't tight anymore. Not suffocating, just space. The kind that lets things land where they need to. Eventually, he said, "I thought you didn't want me around anymore." She traced the rim of her cup, a small, absent gesture. "I thought I was ruining your life." A soft, almost amused exhale slipped from him. "You weren't." "I know," she said. "Now I know." Their breaths fogged in the cool air. A bus passed. A dog barked somewhere. Life continued without waiting for their moment, but that was okay. They weren't chasing it anymore. He rubbed his palms together, searching for words. "I kept trying to move on. I didn't. I kept trying accidentally on purpose. A simple touch. A simple moment. But it felt like the world finally exhaled with them." Later, when they walked back toward her building, their hands eventually found each other. Not tightly, not urgently. Just a gentle, mutual link, like two sentences finally finishing themselves. Life wasn't perfect. It wouldn't be. But it was steady now. Warmer. Less lonely. And as they passed the cafe, he asked, half smiling, "Black coffee at 8:47 tomorrow?" She smirked. "Only if you bring the tea." He chuckled under his breath. And that was it. Their final quiet promise, one only they would understand.